At the end of the Russian-Turkish War of 1877-1870, it was clear that the single-shot Berdan rifles of the Russian Empire are obsolete. The Russian army started immediately with the search for a replacement. The development of a new combat infantry rifle took nearly 10 years. But at the end of the process, a legend was born. Designing the rifle was not easy. First proposals were submitted to the military commission in years 1884 and 1885. These were still large caliber black powder weapons. Everything changed after the French adopted the first military small caliber smokeless cartridge. It was clear that the new Russian rifle would have to combine new smokeless cartridge and a magazine-fed bolt-action mechanism. The matter came ahead in October of 1889, when Belgian firearms designer Mosin Nagant submitted for testing his first rifle prototype. The military commission liked it, but it was felt that the rifle would be very difficult to manufacture in Russian conditions and would be too complicated for simple Russian peasant soldiers. It was therefore combined with a rifle designed by Russian captain Sergei Ivanovich Mosin. The discussion about who had in fact the major share in the development was not resolved until today. It seems that the 7.62mm cartridge, as well as the general shapes and design, were created by Mosin, while Nagant is the author of parts of the feeding mechanism. Final design was adapted in the year 1891 under the designation three-line rifle model 1891. Since the rifle was still too complicated to be produced in Russia, the initial order for 500,000 rifles went in the year 1892 to the French arsenal of Châtellerault. The production later moved to Russian arsenals of Izhevsk, Sestroretsk and Tula, when the machinery and qualified manpower was finally available. From technical point of view, the rifle is similar to other magazine-fed rifles introduced at that time, mainly the Italian model 1891 Carcano and the German Gewehr 88. Along with the rifle, Army also adopted a new smokeless 7.62 by 55 air cartridge, the air standing for ring. Originally, it was designed with a full metal jacketed round nose, but 1908 saw the introduction of a modernized lighter Spitzer bullet which had higher velocity and was more accurate. Although the cartridge was rimmed, with time it became also standard ammunition for light and heavy machine guns. Its variants are still in use today for sniper rifles and machine guns. In 1904, when the Russian Empire went to war against Japan, only a very few infantry units in the Far East were equipped with the Mosin Nagant rifle. The army would therefore have to wait another 10 years before it will find out if its main battle rifle is a success or not. Finally, in summer of 1914, the rifle took to the field in huge numbers. Start of the First World War saw massive mobilization of Russian manpower. It was especially the Mosin Nagant which enabled the Tsar to arm millions of his subjects to exercise his power ambition across Russian borders. Unfortunately for his empire, series of defeats at the hands of Austro-Hungarian and Germans cost him not only lots of men, but also equipment. It's a huge irony that while the Russians were able to replace human loss, they had trouble with replacing lost rifles. Situation was so critical that millions of rifles were ordered abroad, most famously at the Remington and New England Westinghouse. But only a part of these orders were delivered, since further military disasters caused a revolution followed by a civil war. Austria-Hungary and Germany both captured huge stocks of Mosin Nagant rifles and issued them to second-line units. They were also deployed by Finland in fight against the Soviet Union and were used by all sides during the long and bloody Russian Civil War. As a cruel twist of history, the rifle is probably responsible for the death of hundreds of thousands of Russian civilians and soldiers. Production continued during and after the Civil War with minor modifications. The main point of all of them was to simplify the production. Soviet Union faced in the 20s and 30s a lot of economic and social problems. Introduction of new weapons was problematic and costly, and even though the army finally swallowed up to nearly 20% of annual state budget, new tanks, guns and planes were mostly of poor quality. It was therefore decided to stick to the established production of Mosin Nagant rifles instead of replacing them with a newer design. The annual production ran mostly between 100 and 200,000 rifles. In 1938, Army finally settled on a replacement for the rifle. The design, developed by Tokarev, was a self-loading rifle adapted under the designation SVT-38 and later changed to SVT-40. In 1941, when Germany invaded the Soviet Union, the production of the SVT was not yet able to replace the Mosin Nagant. So the old, bolt-action workhorse had to take to the field again. The war of annihilation that followed was actually the finest hour of the rifle. German soldiers had to hammer their way across endless defense lines and waves of Soviet infantry equipped with millions of these rifles. Germans encountered steady stream of incoming 7.62 bullets everywhere they went, from dusty Ukrainian steppes through Belarusian forests to ruins of Russian cities and villages. Doesn't matter if tall or strong, educated or poor, every man equipped with the 5-shot rifle was a threat to the Germans. The rifle helped to slow down German progress more than any other weapon. Its importance being highlighted by the fact that in 1943, at the most critical time of the war, Soviet factories produced 3 million of these rifles and delivered them immediately to the battlefields. When the tide of the war turned, the rifle production was slowing down. Offensive operations of the Red Army relied on combined arms of armor, artillery and tactical airstrikes supported by fast-moving infantry equipped with automatic weapons. But the rifle still served on, its last version being introduced to production in the year 1944, although in smaller numbers. The Mosin Nagant was amongst the first bolt-action rifles designed for a smokeless cartridge and accepted into service by a major military power. It remained in active service up until the second half of the 20th century. Durable and reliable? Sure. But I think, in the end, the legend was not created by the rifle itself, but by men who carried it. Thank you for watching.